Hey guys, Lucas Sacco here with a board breaker tier list. This is for the new format. I'm about to leave for Vegas right now. You guys will probably see this around Monday or Tuesday, but I do really appreciate you guys watching the video. And if I did good at Vegas, then tell me down below. If I didn't top, then comment that I suck. We're just getting straight into it. Triple Tactics Talent. This card is it's up in the A or S tier. I think that you need to have at least one in your deck with talents, so probably an S tier card. I'm sorry, you need to have one in your deck if you're playing Crossout. If you're not playing Crossout, then you should probably be playing 3 of these either in your main deck or your side deck. This card is absolutely insane. Dark Hole. This is used to cover pretty much all of the monster destroying board breakers like Dark Hole, Raigeki, things like that. I think this card's kind of like a B, maybe even a C in this format, just because Fire King, Snake Eye, those are both the 2 most popular decks, and they have a lot of recursion if you're able to Dark Hole them or like board breaker them like this. So I think that this is not the best option. So probably gonna put that down in B tier. Book of Eclipse. This is a card that was interesting and saw a lot of play in Kashtira format. Kind of remained popular throughout all of Rescue Ace format as well. But I think this card has slowly fallen off. It's much less impactful this format, because even if you're able to like Book of Moon or Arvata, they have a lot of different things that they can do to put it in the graveyard and then put it back on the field. So Eclipse is gonna sink down here at a B. Enemy Controller. This card is a card that I think was very, very slept on, including by myself. I thought this card was terrible. But John Wilkins demonstrated in this past weekend at YCS Costa Rica, this card is absolutely insane. I think this card will be in the winning list at Vegas and across a lot of different topping lists. Triple Tactics Thrust. I think Thrust is a very good card. The only problem with Thrust is a lot of people are playing Droll, and Droll is seeing a lot of play. Whether it's correct, whether it's not correct, people will play the card, and that makes Thrust inherently worse. What some people are doing, when I was testing even, is they would main deck Thrust, and if they got Drolled, what they would do is they would go Thrust and set a card like DDG, Different Dimension Ground. They would set a lot of different Floodgates, Daruma Cannon, things like that that would stop you from dying on the next turn, and basically use it as a turn skip, as well as being a very effective board breaker while going second. The only problem is if you get Drolled while you're going second, this card becomes just a clog in your hand. It doesn't do anything. And that's one of the reasons that I'm not the biggest fan of this card right now. Dark Ruler No More. This card is very interesting because it's good against exactly like one deck in the format, the Voiceless Voice deck. If you activate Dark Ruler, that deck pretty much loses. They have 1 disruption left, and it's their the Will Trap card, which is like 1, maybe 2 pops. This card is very good in that matchup, but just because it's good into one matchup, it probably doesn't spread out enough to warrant playing this card in your side deck, especially if it's taking multiple spots. Now, Cosmic Cyclone. This card is absolutely insane. We've seen it across most of the side decks in Costa Rica. Even the UDS, a lot of people were playing this. I think that putting this card as a board breaker seems weird, because the card is very versatile, whether you're going first, whether you're going second, going into the Snake Eyes deck, going into the Fire King deck. Even against Voiceless Voice, this card has so many different applications to interrupt them on their barrier, on their trap card as they're trying to extend. Even activating it in chain to their ritual spell, if you have a way to deal with the ritual monster on summon, is really good. A bunch of different cool interactions there, and because of that, I'm going to put Cosmic Cyclone really high on this list. You don't get to see too many formats where just a single 1-for-1 card becomes insane, but in the Fire King deck, hitting their field spell is good. Into the Snake Eye deck, waiting, then hitting like their IP or their formula in the spell trap zone is good. There's just a lot of different things that Cosmic Cyclone provides that other cards don't do. Not to mention the 2 most common Floodgates that people will be playing this weekend in their side deck is Anti-Spell and Summon Limit. If you get hit with either of those, it's very difficult to play the game. Cosmic Cyclone outs both of them, the most effective. There's a very similar card to this, Twin Twister, but the problem with Twin Twister is it does eat up your hand if you're going second, and if you're going first, I mean, you're just discarding for nothing, because usually if you're using Cosmic Cyclone, you're using it to trade with 1 card. Kaijus are weird. They trade 1 for 1. It's the biggest problem with them. However, if people are consistently making a 3-Appaloosa, I think that Gamma Seal gets a lot of value, or just Kaijus in general, as long as it's not the Fire Kaiju, because they can still Prometheum pop it, and that makes the card inherently just like worse if you're playing the Fire one. But I think this card is it's interesting. I'm not sure if I would put it up in the A tier even. It's probably about the level of Dark Ruler if you want to play it, but I think there's just better options than it, so I'm going to put it in B. Forbidden Droplet. This card is still a very good card. I feel like a lot of people have fallen in favor of playing Droplet for some reason. Not too sure as to why. The only problem with Droplet right now is that it's very difficult to use it on the board, because a lot of the boards are ending with like Ambloel and 1 guy, or Ambler and Ambler Larvata or Ambler Appaloosa, Ambler Flamebird, right? So you're really only getting value with Droplet from one card, so it has to trade 1 for 1 in that instance. And a lot of the time you don't have the ability to use Droplet for value plus or use it to dodge things going second. But Droplet has the same effectiveness against Voiceless Voice, which is a very important thing to keep in mind. But also Droplet can stop the Puppet Lock. So if you're scared of Branded, Droplet's a very good thing to try out. There's a few different interactions where they'll use their Albion without being under loss protection, and it just shuts them down there, and they lose the game instantly. Change of Heart is very good into the Fire King mirror, even into the Snake Eye mirror. Being able to force out their IP is like their first action, forces them to make like an Appo, or if they do make the Appo on their turn unprotected, you can just Change of Heart, take it, and that just makes going through the board so much easier. So because of that, I'm going to put it up here, just a little bit past Talents, but worse than Econ, because Change of Heart is only a going second card. There's no way you can play this card going first, right? Evenly Matched is bad. Straight up, this card is not good right now. That doesn't mean it's not ever going to be good, but right now the card is bad. You lose your battle phase in order to make your opponent's board weaker, right? The problem is, even if you make their board weaker, they're still sitting on about 2 to 3 disruptions, and it's going to be really hard to make a full board through 2 to 3 disruptions. Think of it like this. If you activate Evenly Matched, it kind of makes it to where you're going first, right? If they don't have an Omnigate for it, it's kind of like you're going first. Except with the 1 to 2 cards they're able to disrupt you with, which ends up being like 3 disruptions, it's like you're playing through 3 hand traps to make a board, because you're not going to kill them, and it's hard to take away their resource that they've already acquired. They have follow-up guaranteed, and they're just going to kill you. Like, plain and simple, you are going to die on the next turn. Yes, I saw Yassine played this in his list at Costa Rica. Pretty sure that he said that he wouldn't play it again. But this card honestly is worse than Eclipse. It's worse than Dark Hole for me. I'd put this card down here in C. Not a big fan of this card right now, and it wasn't a great in Rescue Ace format. I don't know if we'll really see a format in the near future where Evenly is that good, just because every deck that's good, it's creeping up in the tier list and going up tier-wise to tier 1, tier 0.5, tier 0, right? They're acquiring lots and lots of follow-up, and that's what generally makes it that good. So giving up the ability to kill them there, knowing your opponent has lots of follow-up, is usually not the best idea. Super Poly, this card's nice. This card is nasty. The Voiceless Voice deck can play this card very flawlessly, just because their extra deck is so empty. I know some Fire King lists are playing this. The problem with the Fire King lists that are playing Super Poly, just doesn't give you that much room. There's about 2 flex spots in every Fire King deck if you think Promethean is mandatory at 2. It is mandatory at 2. So 2 flex spots, and if you're only playing Garura and Mud Dragon as your flex spots, I feel like you're missing something in your turn 1 combo that makes the Super Poly kind of hinder you. So I think this card is insane if your deck can play it, but if you're playing Fire King, then it's probably not worth trying to squeeze it into your list. Lava Golem is a bad kaiju. That's the best way to put it. It eats 2 monsters. The problem is that it's fire, right? So they can Promethean pop it, trigger all their Garunics, all their Fire King monsters, and that's why I think this card is probably a B tier card at the very best. It might even be down here in C tier like Lava Golem. The difference with the Evenly compared to Lava Golem is you still do get your battle phase, but you lose your normal summon. And most of the good decks right now do require a normal summon. Sphere Mode. This card is slightly better than a Kaiju. The only problem is you're kind of taking on risk, and if your opponent doesn't on a 3-monster board. What you can do in decks that don't require a normal summon, though, is you can definitely bait interactions. Like, you can bait your opponent to use their Flame Burst to summon IP to link with their Flame Burst, summon a bunch of guys, because they are going to inherently just summon more and more monsters as the turn goes on. And being able to Lava Golem them, Sphere Mode them halfway through the turn and then kill them is insane. Also, important thing to note with Sphere Mode, if you're playing a fire deck that doesn't require its normal summon, there's not many, but you can actually Zealantis the Sphere Mode, and it comes back to your field. So if you're looking for like a weird way to out the Sphere Mode after you kill them, just do the Raging Phoenix Zealantis line, you actually get the card back on your side. Very interesting. Ultimate Slayer, once again, this is a card that you can play in Voiceless Voice very flawlessly, and this card's very high impact. The only thing you have to be careful of when playing this card is that this card does lose very hard to Anti-Spell. This is something that a lot of people are citing for going first. It's between this, Summon Limit, Solemn Strike. Those are the 3 main options that people are considering for this weekend at YCS Vegas. And I guess this will be posted after so you guys can see for yourself the results and what ended up being the best one overall. not just what first place played, but over the top 8, top 4, right? Top 16 even. There's going to be a lot of different lists that are playing a lot of different floodgates, and you should just really take all of those into consideration when playing board breakers like Ultimate Slayer. Because this card's very, very impactful. It does a lot of things, even into like the mediocre boards and even into the strong boards. But you do have to consider that the card is weird into certain Go First cards. Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm is an interesting choice because this does fall into the same categories as Ultimate Slayer, where it loses to certain cards like Anti-Spell. But I'd actually put Lightning Storm a little bit higher than the Ultimate Slayer here, just because Ultimate Slayer really, really destroys some of the Fire King boards. What they're doing a lot of the time if they open Diabell Star is they're actually sending away their Sanctuary to summon out the Flamebirds to play on a Nib. So if you have Lightning Storm in that instance, you can Lightning Storm their spell traps. It's going to take away all their Imperms, all their Cosmics if they play into enemy controllers, their Crossouts maybe. It's going to take away all of those cards, as well as their Summon Limit if they have it, their Solemn Strike. It gets rid of all of their back row plus their Field Spell, and then their Field Spell is going to wipe their own field for them. Right, so this card is very, very valuable in that one specific instance. Now I do have a couple more cards that I'm going to show you here. I've actually hidden them, so I didn't add them just yet, just so you guys could see what the main ones are and what the secret ones are. But here's the secret ones right now. So these are the 5 hidden goo cards for YCS Vegas, the event that probably happened this past weekend. It's Burning Draw, Foolish Return, Wise Man's Chalice, Magical Spring, and Monster Reborn. These 5 cards are absolutely insane in testing. It's what a lot of people have been keeping private. It's just how insane all of these cards are. I'm going to go through the ones that are probably less known. It's probably like these 4 here. Everyone knows what Monster Reborn does, and after 10 years of this card not being in the format, this card has finally come back into meta rotation, not just as a good extension or a way to keep playing when your opponent's disrupted you, but as a disruption and like a way to steal value and resources from your opponent. Being able to Monster Reborn, take like a Promethean from your opponent's insane. You get the effect of summon, you can use it to link, or like using Monster Reborn to take your opponent's Garunix effect, destroy Kieran, then summon like a Ponix or like an Arvata from your hand is absolutely wild. This card is up here for sure. It's definitely like the top 5 board breakers to play if you're wanting to play strictly board breakers. Next card is Burning Draw. This card is probably one you don't know. So what it does is it targets a linked monster your opponent controls, and then you draw cards equal to that monster's link rating. So if your opponent has an Appaloosa, and you go Burning Draw, target your Appaloosa, you're actually going to draw 4 cards. And going second, that literally puts 9 cards in your hand to break their board. Especially if you're playing other board breakers, you're going to be having cards like Enemy Controller, Talons, Cosmic Cyclone in your hand, and they're literally going to die right there. It's not even close. If you have 9 cards to play through their 6 disruptions, that leaves 3 other cards of value that are just dedicated to killing your opponent if you use your cards properly. Obviously, there's duplicates and things like that happen, and you're locked into fire monsters with Burning Draw, but it really doesn't matter. It's so easy to just finish the game if you have 9 cards, right? So Burning Draw is definitely up here as well into these new board breakers of the meta. Foolish Return, I think this card is insane. It plays around the best floodgates in the format, plays around Anti-Spell perfectly, and if you Foolish Return your opponent's Garunix, it takes away the resource, not just for this turn, but probably forever. The best way to break a board is to pop their Field Spell at that point. If you know that they have no like good follow-up off of it because they don't get Garunix effect, you're putting back their Field Spell or you're destroying their Field Spell, and their Garunix is now trapped in their decks. They don't really have a good way to access it unless they're playing 2 Field Spells, which basically no one is. Not to mention you can just use this card preemptively to trade with the Promethean, the Garunix, the Arvata. If they destroy Kieran and you know they're trying to summon out an Arvata, you can just chain Foolish Return and take that resource away. This card specifically is a little bit better than some of the other options. One, because it's a spell, so it doesn't play into Talents, or it doesn't get negated by Appaloosa, but because this card can target anything, right? It can target spell cards. So if your opponent left an original in graveyard, and that was what they were going to use for their follow-up, if you can break their board and establish like an SP or an IP with like an Appaloosa and like, I don't know, an Arvata, and then you just Foolish Return their original, the game's over. That's insane. It's just done. Wise Man's Chalice. This is one that not a lot of people have seen, but this card is just Monster Reborn. It's a bad version of Monster Reborn, but as we discussed, Monster Reborn's insane, so a bad version of Monster Reborn is probably still good. And it is. The only restriction with Wise Man's Chalice is that you have to do it on an empty board. So you have to do it as your first line of play, which is still a huge way to disrupt your opponent, taking away their Garunix early and holding it on your field, or taking away their Promethean and using that. just to hold it hostage. There's a lot of different interactions where this card is really good, or even just Wise Man's Chalice taking your opponent's Arvasa if they leave it in the graveyard. That way you have a negate going into their board. Very insane. And probably the most insane card out of the check choices is Magical Spring. Magical Spring is absolutely wild into the best deck, Fire King Snake Eye and the Snake Eye deck. In the Snake Eye deck, they're consistently ending with 2 to 3 guys in their spell and trap zone because they have the Savage equip, they have the field spell, and they're going to have whatever the Flameburge is preparing to summon out, right? So if you start playing through their board and they go Flameburge effect to summon out their guy and you chain Magical Sprint, you're drawing 3 cards and discarding 1. Keep in mind, 3 cards, discard 1. There's a certain banned card that draws 3 and discards 2. And that card we could never see coming back into the format, right? So if we get a quick play version, a better version of the card that draws 3 and then discards, who cares? That's broken, by far broken. That's why honestly I think that a lot of people have been buying out Magical Spring. If you look at the price of this card, it's skyrocketed over the past 2 weeks. But this is just an example and thoughts of my own opinions with board breakers into the next format. I think that if you're going to play board breakers, you have to be very careful because there are some things that really hurt you when you're going second with board breakers. Things like Nibiru become much more impactful. Things like Droll become much more impactful. But at the same time, it's still easy to kill them. Taking away all their resources, it's really easy in combination with other hand traps. And one thing that I do like about other hand traps is that what everyone's doing right now is they're basically on a standard 15 to 16 non-engine cards. If you play 15 to 16 hand traps, there's about a 65% chance you open 2 of them going second because you only have 5 cards in your hand, right? If you're going second, you don't have a 6th card there where hand traps can be effective unless you top deck exactly imperm, right? But going with board breakers, you're going to have 6 cards before you get to use them. So you get to see all 6 of your cards before you decide your best course of action. And with that, there's about a 75% chance that you draw 2 board breakers, and that's wild. Being able to like Cosmic Cycle in your opponent's field spell in main phase, they trigger all their guys and you just instantly talent look at their hand. You gotta know every hand trap they have. You gotta take away the scariest one, and you can like take away their Kieran and then just like shuffle back their Promethean if you need to. That's wild. Not to mention if you have the other board breakers like Magical Spring or Burning Draw that help you draw into other hand traps. There's just so many cool interactions with the board breakers in this format. But this is, once again, just my opinions, my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think down below. But I do really appreciate you guys watching the video, and please subscribe. Have a good night.